All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into Neanderthal territory. But get this, we're focusing on something you might not expect.
You interested in their extinction, right?
Yeah, the big mystery, why did they disappear while our ancestors thrived?
Well, forget climate change or competition with Homo sapiens for a second.
Wait, where are we going with this?
We're talking inner ears.
Inner ears.
Yeah, sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But bear with me, because these new studies suggest the shape of those tiny structures could actually hold a key to understanding their evolutionary journey.
Okay, so what kind of key are we talking about?
Specifically, a dramatic population crash.
Okay, you mean a bottleneck event? I thought the leading theory was that Neanderthals experienced that way early on in their evolution.
That's what scientists thought for a long time.
So what's changed?
Well, this new research suggests something different. They found evidence for a much later bottleneck, which, well, that could have had a much more profound impact on their ability to survive.
I see, so a later bottleneck is a bigger problem for the Neanderthals.
Exactly.
But I'm still a bit confused. How did they figure this out from inner ears? That connection just isn't clicking for me yet.
It's pretty ingenious, actually.
Mhm.
See, the inner ear, especially those tiny fluid-filled tubes called semicircular canals, those guys are responsible for our balance.
Right, balance, got it.
But those canals, they can also reveal a lot about a species' genetic history. Researchers use this really cool technique called geometric morphometrics to analyze the inner ear structures of Neanderthal fossils from different periods.
Wait, hold on, back up for a second. Geometric what?
Geometric morphometrics.
Yeah, could you break that down for me, for the listeners?
Sure. Think of it like taking a really precise 3D scan of the inner ear. And they use these scans to compare the shapes and variations in these structures over hundreds of thousands of years.
So they're looking for what, like patterns in the shape of these inner ears to trace their genetic history?
Exactly.
But how can you tell if a population crashed just by looking at ears?
Well, picture this, a bottleneck, right?
Yeah, a sudden population crash.
Right. It usually leads to a decrease in genetic diversity.
Oh.
And this lack of diversity can show up in subtle variations in anatomy, even in the inner ear.
So a population crash leaves a sort of fingerprint on their anatomy.
Pretty much.
That's wild, but wouldn't that be, like, really hard to spot in fossils? I mean, we're talking about tiny structures here.
It is. But these researchers, they were clever. They focused on 3 specific Neanderthal populations. One from Cima de los Huesos in Spain, representing a very early stage of Neanderthal evolution.
Okay.
Then there's Krapina in Croatia, a later group with clear Neanderthal traits, and finally the late Neanderthals, fossils from Western Europe that represent the last chapter of their existence.
Okay, got it. So they're comparing the inner ear structures of these different groups, over time to see if they spot this fingerprint. What did they find? Was there a noticeable difference between the early Neanderthals and those later groups?
Yeah, so the early Neanderthals from Cima de los Huesos and Krapina, they showed a lot of variation in their inner ears, which tells us that they had a diverse genetic pool, what you'd expect in a healthy population. But then when they looked at the late Neanderthals,
The variation had plummeted.
you got it. Their inner ear structures were way more similar to each other. This strongly suggests a bottleneck happened sometime after the Krapina Neanderthals.
The Krapina Neanderthals lived roughly 130,000 years ago, right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Wow, so instead of a, slow decline, we're looking at a sudden, dramatic population crash that changed their evolutionary trajectory.
Exactly.
Okay, this is where I get a little lost. Can you remind me, what were those traditional theories about Neanderthal extinction again, and how does this new research challenge them?
Well, we used to think Neanderthals gradually died out, maybe because of climate change, or maybe because they just couldn't compete with Homo sapiens, right? But this late bottleneck, well, it paints a different picture.
Yeah, how so?
It's like they were dealt a really bad hand genetically right before things started to get, really tough.
Okay, that's making a bit more sense now. But what could have caused such a drastic bottleneck in the first place? I mean, something major must have happened to, wipe out so much of their population.
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? The study points to a period of, wild climate swings. We call it marine isotope stage 5, which lasted from about 130,000 to 80,000 years ago. It was a time of crazy fluctuating temperatures, which, it could have fragmented Neanderthal populations, making them even more vulnerable.
So not just a gradual change, we're talking a real roller coaster ride. But hold on, what about their interaction with Homo sapiens? I mean, we did interbreed with them, right? So could that have played a role in all of this?
That's the fascinating part. Even with interbreeding, It seems like the effects of this bottleneck were just too strong to overcome. Their genetic diversity took a major hit, which, well, that could have had a lasting impact on their ability to adapt and survive.
So are we saying they were basically doomed even before Homo sapiens arrived on the scene? Or did our arrival make things even worse for them?
Ooh, that is the million-dollar question, isn't
It
it?
it is. And to understand that, I think we need to dig a little deeper into the main models of Neanderthal evolution that have been floating around for years.
Yeah, there's a couple main ones.
Right. So can you remind us, what are those models and how does this new research about inner ears fit into the picture?
Well, first one's called the accretion model, and it basically suggests that Neanderthals evolved slowly and gradually, with small changes accumulating over time.
Right. Slow and steady. And the other one?
The second one, the two-phase model, argues that there were two distinct phases in their evolution, with a major shift caused by, you guessed it, an early bottleneck. But this new research...
It throws a wrench into both those models, right? Because if
Yeah.
they had this late bottleneck, it means neither model really fully captures the whole story.
Exactly. It's like we've discovered a missing piece of the puzzle.
A missing piece that changes everything. So what does this all mean for you, dear listener? Stay tuned because in part 2, we're going to explore the mind-blowing implications of this late bottleneck and what it might mean for our understanding of Neanderthal extinction.
It's like, imagine a tree, and it's been weakened by disease.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Even if it's still standing, it becomes much more vulnerable to like a strong wind, a wind that might not have affected it otherwise.
Ooh, I like that. So you're saying that this late bottleneck was like the disease, leaving Neanderthals so weakened that they couldn't, weather the challenges that came their way.
Yeah, exactly. Remember, a bottleneck dramatically reduces the genetic variation within a population.
Right, less diversity.
Right, and that loss of diversity, it can have a ripple effect. It can make a species less adaptable to changes in the environment, more susceptible to diseases, and it can even impact things like their reproductive success.
Wow, so basically they were set up for a tough time, genetically speaking. But how does this, how does this change our understanding of the role that Homo sapiens might have played in their disappearance? Because for a long time, the narrative was that we were the main reason, right? Like we just outcompeted them or something.
Right, it's easy to assume that, yeah. But this new research, it throws a wrench in that simple narrative.
In what way?
Well, it suggests that Neanderthals may have already been on a downward trajectory because of this bottleneck.
So they were already struggling, and then maybe our arrival just added, like, fuel to the fire.
Yeah, it's a possibility. It could be that they were less able to cope with any additional pressures, whether it was competition from us or further environmental changes.
Okay, so instead of a simple story where Homo sapiens come in and just wipe out the Neanderthals, it's way more complex than that.
Exactly.
They were dealing with their own issues, and we might have been just one factor, among many that contributed to their extinction.
Precisely. And honestly, extinction is rarely ever a simple event, with one clear cause.
Right.
It's usually a complex interplay of factors that unfold over a long period.
It's almost like a perfect storm, right? Multiple things hitting them all at once. But this new research about their inner ears, it seems like it's given us a whole new perspective on their lives, not just their extinction.
Absolutely. The inner ear isn't just about balance.
Right.
It also plays a role in spatial awareness and coordination. And some researchers think that the thicker semicircular canals we see in Neanderthals, well, they might indicate adaptations to their, specific environments and lifestyles.
So you're saying there could be a link between the shape of their inner ears and how they moved through their world, like how they hunted, how they interacted with their surroundings, maybe even how they communicated.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it. Neanderthals are often depicted as these hardy individuals adapted to Ice Age Europe. Thicker, more robust inner ears could have helped them maintain balance and stability in those challenging conditions.
It makes sense. Yeah, they needed those extra adaptations to thrive in such a harsh environment.
And it's not just about the physical challenges. The inner ear also plays a role in how we perceive sound and spatial orientation, which are, crucial for communication, hunting, social interactions. So by studying their inner ears, we're getting a glimpse into how they communicated, how they tracked prey, even how they structured their social groups.
It really is amazing. It's like this tiny part of their anatomy is opening up a whole new window into their lives. It makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in the fossil record just waiting to be discovered.
Exciting, isn't it? It really shows how science is a process of constantly refining our understanding. Who knows what other surprises are still out there waiting to be unearthed.
Speaking of refining our understanding, this late bottleneck theory really throws a bit of a curveball at the existing models of Neanderthal evolution, right?
Yeah, for sure. It challenges those traditional ways of thinking about how they evolved over time.
Right. Like we talked about the accretion model, which suggested a slow and gradual evolution, and the two-phase model, which proposed two distinct phases with a major shift caused by, well, by an early bottleneck. But this new research suggests neither model really completely captures the complexity of their story.
No, it really doesn't. It's like we're realizing the story is much, much richer than we initially thought.
Mm.
Early Neanderthals seem to have had a decent amount of diversity, but then this late bottleneck threw everything off course.
So where do we go from here? I mean, if the traditional models don't quite fit anymore, how do we start to piece together a new understanding of Neanderthal evolution, one that takes into account this late bottleneck?
Well, that's where the fun begins.
Yeah.
This new research opens up a whole new set of questions, and one of the most fascinating is, well, what if that bottleneck had never happened?
Ooh, now you're talking. That's a question that could keep us up all night. What if the Neanderthals had never experienced that population crash? What would the world look like today? Stay tuned, because in part 3, we're going to dive headfirst into that very question and explore the mind-boggling possibilities of a world where Neanderthals, well, they took a different path. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle that mind-blowing question.
The what if?
Yeah, the what if. What if Neanderthals had never experienced that late bottleneck? It's like stepping into an alternate reality, isn't it?
It really is, and it makes you think about how fragile existence can be.
For any species, really.
Exactly. One seemingly small event can have, these ripple effects through time, completely changing the course of evolution.
So let's imagine, just for fun, that those ripples never happen. No late bottleneck, their populations stay strong, they keep their genetic diversity, they're better equipped to, deal with whatever challenges come their way. What happens next? Do they still disappear, or could they have, I don't know, found a way to coexist with us, with Homo sapiens?
Well, we can't rewind the evolutionary clock, but we can, follow the logic.
Okay, fruitful.
If Neanderthals had been, less vulnerable, more adaptable, they would have had a fighting chance to make it through those tough times in the late Pleistocene.
So instead of getting pushed towards extinction, they might have, held their ground, carved out their own niches alongside our ancestors. We could be looking at a world with two distinct human species coexisting, maybe even, I don't know, competing and collaborating.
Imagine that. A world with even more human diversity. Who knows what kind of cultural innovations or technological advancements might have emerged from that interaction. Different art forms, different social structures, maybe even different ways of thinking about the world.
It's like opening a door to a whole other reality, a reality where the human story took a wildly different path. And it really makes you wonder, what potential did we lose when Neanderthals disappeared? What could we have learned from them?
It's a humbling thought. We often think of Neanderthals as our, less advanced cousins, but recent research has shown just how complex and sophisticated they really were.
In what way?
I mean, they had advanced tool-making skills, they cared for their sick and injured, and there's even evidence they might have had their own, forms of art and symbolic expression.
So wiping them off the map wasn't just losing another human species, it was like losing an entire library of knowledge, a different way of seeing the world.
Exactly, and it reminds us that our understanding of the past, of our own origins, is always changing, as we find new evidence and develop new techniques. Who knows what other game-changing discoveries are still out there waiting to be unearthed?
Every new fossil, every new study has the potential to rewrite the story of human evolution, and that's what makes it so exciting. This research about their inner ears, for example, has opened up a whole new avenue for understanding Neanderthals.
It shows how much we still don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of science, isn't it? It's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions, pushing the boundaries of what we think we know, and always being open to new possibilities.
That's a perfect note to end on. So to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you see a reconstruction of a Neanderthal, don't Don't just see a distant relative who faded into extinction. Imagine them as a vital part of the human story, a part that, well, if things had gone a little differently, might still be shaping our world today.
And never stop asking those what if questions.
Yeah.
It's those questions that spark our curiosity, drive our exploration, and help us appreciate the incredible complexity and wonder of life on Earth.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Neanderthals. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing.